You want to introduce yourself?
I'm spinning on a spinning wheel. I'm Hood Dendy or Houdini. They couldn't say Hood Dendy in Mexico where I learned Spanish. But somehow or another I was born in San Angelo, Texas, where the Fort Concho was, and got put on a committee to start a Pioneer Day. But that was back 60 years ago when they didn't have Pioneer Days. And I said I knew a lady who had a spinning wheel, and found out that she did have one, but it was in the attic and it was broken and she didn't know how to use it, and even the county agent didn't know how to use it. And San Angelo is the wool and mohair capital of the world. So I decided somebody needed to repair the wheel, and I repaired it and gave a lousy demonstration, bought this one in a box, put it together, and from that I have decided to try to keep the art or custom of spinning on the spinning wheel, because I couldn't find anybody who would explain it to me. Anybody who was doing it didn't talk about it. So I thought people needed to learn what is happening when you're working with a spinning wheel. And I found out that man's oldest invention is, oddly enough, a drop spindle. And to do a drop spindle, you have to just take and drop it. And since it sometimes breaks when you try to do this, they call it a drop spindle. But really it's just taking any kind of object and giving it a twist and letting that twist travel up into a fiber. And usually I use black and white from a sheet. It's two different sheets, of course, not the same sheet. And that way you can see the spinning of the fibers as they spin together. If you have loose fibers, it's like cotton candy and the wind will blow it apart. But if you let it twist up there into your fibers, you make your yarn. And this way of making yarn has been done for 10,000 years. Oddly enough, all cultures across the world somehow learned how to take fibers from the silkworm or flax or the llama or cotton or you name it. Whatever you use fibers on, you can use a drop spindle and make a string or yarn to make cloth out of. And how all of these other cultures in the same amount of time, about 10,000 years ago, invented man's oldest invention all over the world. I'm not going to say whether that's aliens or God's inspiration, but I think it's amazing that it happened that way. The only problem with the drop spindle is once you get it down and you get this made, you have to take it off and wrap it around your spindle and start all over again. This is how all cultures made their cloth, their blankets, anything they were wearing or trying to keep warm with, by using a drop spindle and letting that spin travel up into your raw fiber again and starting all over. Many people just walk around even today in the Andes Mountains with a fleece across their shoulder, and while they're walking to market, they are spinning because it takes a lot of time to make enough cloth for a family. Luckily, women's lib started in 1492. It wasn't Columbus that did it, but in Europe they discovered a method of taking a drop spindle and putting it on its edge or horizontal and using a pulley. I've been in many museums and they say that this is how it's spinning and they put this over here. This is just an old cotton string connecting the bobbin and flyer here to a big wheel. I turn the big wheel with my foot and that gives a twist to my yarn. This is how it's called a spinning wheel. It's not that the wheel is spinning, the wheel is twisting the yarn and spinning. It is making the twist to travel up. When I get the twist traveling up into my yarn and it's here, I don't have to stop and take it off like I did with the drop spindle, I can just release the pressure, and the flyer, which is separate from the bobbin, wraps my yarn around the bobbin, and I can continue pulling on the fibers and letting that twist travel up. I'm sitting in the wind now, and you can see that that gust of wind almost blew my fibers apart before they got twisted. Once I get them twisted, of course, it's ready to be made into a pair of socks or a sweater or whatever you want to make with your yarn. Sometimes, if you'll notice, it's not exactly smooth. I worked for a long time trying to get it just perfect. I found out if you wanted it perfect, you could go down to a department store and buy it. And they're not going to pay me for the time it takes to make it perfect. But back then, they would take it and put 2 or 3 bobbins on one time and run them back through, and you make what we call 2-ply or 3-ply yarn so that it wouldn't break. If anyone has ever tried to set up a loom to weave a piece of cloth, the time-consuming part of it is putting the strings on the loom, and then before you know it, you had 3, 4, 5, 10 of them break. Now you have to unstring the whole thing and start all over again. So you don't want your strings to break. So sometimes many people put 2 and 3-ply yarn through, not for beauty or to make like this is. This is the black and white. It's just 1 ply. But I could make it 2-ply, not for beauty, but for durability and use, so that it didn't break when you're trying to make your sweaters or your whatever you're trying to make out of your yarn. But this is starting from beginning to end, the same method that is used in a factory today, except the factories today make big balls of this already called top or yarn, and they just run it through a machine on one side and on the other and weave it together by a machine instead of doing it by hand. But it's the same method, taking raw fiber of any kind, giving it a twist, and then putting together your pieces of yarn to make a piece of cloth.
Thank you very much. That was a very interesting demonstration. Mr. Denny has been, we had a brochure from Mr. Denny has been, was at the first Kerrville Arts and Crafts Festival, and way back in the 70s, and it featured him in one of their brochures. So we're talking about him. This gentleman is a true pioneer. Let me see if I can get this in front of the camera here. There we go. That's Mr. Denny right there, And this brochure is dated 1977. He was spinning all the way back then. So he's a true pioneer of the resurgence of the handcraft movement, I guess we'll call it, because it's just grown and grown and grown. I remember when it started back then, and we had to travel to Branson, Missouri. Back then it wasn't known for its music. What it was known for was Silver Dollar City, where artisans gathered, and you could watch them, watch blacksmiths at work, watch spinners at work, and watch people do these old things. Nowadays, thanks to the efforts of people like Hood Dendy, there's people all over the world are keeping alive these old crafts and learning how to do them.
For example, this is a piece of wool, and I'm holding both ends of the same piece of wool. And when I started to learn this, I had to learn it out of a book. And when the people told me in the book, or when I read the book, they said, pull on the fibers until they slide. You can't do it like this. And I was trying hard, and the lady gave a demonstration from St. Louis into San Angelo. I invited her over to my house, and she said, oh, your problem is you're holding the opposite end of the same piece of fiber. It won't slide. What you need to do is just come up this way and let it slide. And now, as you can see, and that's all I had to do to learn was don't hold the same end, opposite ends of the same piece of fiber. You've got to move 3 or 4 inches. They didn't mention it in the book. And I learned now that it is much more peaceful. Back then I was breaking everything and pulling and it was, but now I just let it sit back like this and let the spin travel up into your raw fibers. It's relaxing, it's fun, and easy to do.
Very natural looking process, actually.
And the ladies I tried to copy from put a fence around themselves and said nothing and just sat and spun. I like to explain it, and I like to use now black and white so that you can see the twist traveling up into the fiber.
Yes, it's real obvious looking at the yarn.
Other than trying to keep it a secret, I think people need to be educated into what really went into doing and making clothing and blankets for you now.
Well, they even had to do things like this even for like fishing line and
or anything.
You know, anything that you'd use string for.
It's binding twine to tie your logs up together in your tents and anything that you were going to try to use. George Washington was freezing at Valley Forge because England wasn't supplying us with any more fiber because it was against the law under English domination for us to have sheep or any kind of the raw materials. So real quick, for example, the Rambouillet sheep, why do we call it Rambouillet with all those silent letters? It's because it's French. And the French never did get along with the British anyway, so when the French saw we needed sheep, they shipped sheep over for us, and we had all along the eastern seaboard your manufacturing of clothing factories simply because we needed this clothing immediately. So we were really quickly raising sheep and manufacturing cloth ourselves. And after that first winter, our armies were clothed. George Washington himself spun and wove a yard square piece of cloth every week, and every member of his family was required to do the same thing. I don't know if he did it out in the battlefield, but his family was, and when he was at home, he also took part in that as an example of how important it was that we have enough clothing for our troops.
Wow, that's an interesting story. I had not heard that before, but that explains a lot about why he was so revered for so long, was that he was just willing to understand what was important.
It's not just for women to do this, because I guarantee you, if you take these cards, if somebody's not ever used them with these metal files in here, and you try to do this, and you're a grandmother, these things stick.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, after a week of doing this, if you took that metal skillet and told your grandson or son he better shape up or you're going to hit him with you, he behaved because Grandma had some upper arm strength just doing the carding for the fibers to be going the right directions for them to be spun up. So it wasn't just and the little old ladies spinning on the spinning wheel. These women, pioneer women, were strong as any man, I bet you, in many, many cases.
Well, thank you, Mr. Denny. I really appreciate you showing us your technique here.
No problem.
All right.